Today we are making 4 different varieties of ice cream, and they're all pretty simple and they all come from a base recipe. But first we're going to make our add-ins, and we're going to start by making cookie dough for our cookie dough ice cream. So you're going to need a stand mixer. You can do this by hand. I would start with softened butter if you are mixing by hand, but normally if I'm using my mixer, I just throw my cold butter in, cut in pieces. And then I'm going to add my sugar. And to the sugar, we're also going to add a little bit of molasses to give us kind of a brown sugar mixture, because that's really all brown sugar is, and salt and some vanilla. Now this is a very standard cookie dough recipe. Up to this point, we mix this together for about 5 minutes until it's really smooth. And here I'm going to scrape things down because we want to make sure everything is well incorporated. Next, we're adding a couple tablespoons of milk to help kind of moisten and loosen the batter to make it easier to incorporate the flour. So we'll give that a mix for a couple minutes. Now we scrape down again. Again, just want everything nice and incorporated. And then we're going to slowly start adding the flour, about a couple tablespoons to a quarter cup at a time. And when it's well incorporated, then we're going to add our chocolate chips. Now, since this is going to be cookie dough that we're going to put in ice cream, we're going to use mini chocolate chips because large chocolate chips are going to be really hard to bite when they're frozen. So our mini chips go into the bowl, give it a quick mix, and now it's done. Here's some cookie dough. Now you can always cook your flour ahead of time just to be on the safe side. Here we are going to shape it and cut it so it makes it easier to make the cookie dough pieces that will go into our ice cream. So you're going to kind of take a piece of parchment and flatten it out, and then we're going to take a rolling pin and roll it as thin as we can, so until it's about, I would say about a 1/4 inch thick, and just roll it out until it's smooth all the way around. And this is going to fill this entire parchment that I have here. And I just reuse this one and keep it in the freezer for whenever I want to make cookie dough for ice cream. So now I take a pizza roller and we're going to make thin strips and one way, and then we're going to cut them the other way, so we end up with a bunch of really small pieces like so. And once we finish cutting this up, we're going to pop it into the freezer, because anything going into your ice cream, you're going to want it cold. So now the base. The base is very simple. It is 2 cups of half and half, and that goes into a bowl. And again, we always scrape everything out. And to that we're going to add 3/4 of a cup of sugar. You can adjust the sugar to the sweetness that you like. I find that 3/4 is sweet enough for me. Then we add 2 tablespoons of vanilla, and we're going to give that a nice whisk to kind of start dissolving the sugar. It's not really going to dissolve completely, but it will get it started. Once that's all mixed in, we're going to add 2 cups of heavy cream. So it's really just 2 cups of half and half and 2 cups of heavy cream. If you only have heavy cream, you could do 3 cups of heavy cream and 1 cup of milk. But in the end, you want that kind of consistency where you have about 3-to-1 milk and cream, or in this case, half and half 2 and heavy cream 2. And again, we're going to whisk this as well as we can. And this is our base recipe. This is vanilla. And this is the same vanilla that I would use for our cookie dough. or any other add-ins you could add crushed Oreos and have cookies and cream. Now I have this style of ice cream maker, which has a compressor, so it allows me to make several batches one after another. But if you have one of those that has a canister you keep in the freezer, I have made this recipe in that and it turns out just as well. Or if you have an old school with the ice and rock salt, that works too. This is a very forgiving recipe. Now it took my ice cream maker about 40 to 45 minutes to make this consistency of ice cream. And this is where it's done, and I'm going to take it and put it in a container first, and then it's going to go in the freezer kind of to solidify. Now if I was going to add the cookie dough at this point, I'm going to break off the cookie dough. See how it's kind of frozen? So it's easy to break apart into pieces. And these are the little chunks of cookie dough that are going to go into the ice cream. And it's really easy to come apart. This recipe of cookie dough makes enough for, I would say, about 3 to 4 batches of cookie dough ice cream, depending on how much cookie dough you like in your ice cream. So to incorporate the cookie dough, we're going to take out our ice cream and put it into I just reuse these store containers because I like to make like 4 quarts of ice cream at a time. And so once that's in, I'm going to add the cookie dough pieces, and you just add to your heart's content however many chunks you want. And again, these are cold from the freezer, so it doesn't melt our ice cream too much as we add them in. Then you take your spatula and you kind of mix everything, incorporating it in, and then it goes in the freezer. So now our next flavor, we are adding again our base. So we have our 2 cups of half and half, and we're going to add our 3/4 of a cup of sugar. So again, this base recipe. And this time we are going to add peppermint and vanilla extract to make mint chip ice cream. So we'll add our sugar, and then what we're going to add is 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and 1.5 teaspoons of mint, in this case peppermint extract. Now I find that if I don't add some vanilla, it's a little too toothpastey. So the vanilla helps kind of temper that. So in goes the 1.5 teaspoons of peppermint extract, and then we'll add our teaspoon of vanilla extract. And once we add that, we're going to again give it a whisk before we add our 2 cups of heavy cream. Heavy cream is also called whipping cream or heavy whipping cream here in the States. So whatever you find that's kind of in that area, you'll be fine. So here's our quick whisk, and now comes our heavy cream. And again, we want 2 cups of each. And that's going to mix in, and again, give it a whisk to kind of incorporate it. And again, don't look for sugar to be dissolved. It's not. It will completely mix in and blend in while it's churning in the ice cream maker. Just incorporate it in, give it a good mix, and then it's ready. That's it. Ready to go into the ice cream maker. I think I whisk it for maybe 10 seconds. You pour it straight in, and you just gotta follow the directions for your ice cream maker. I know the canister ones that are from, you keep in the freezer, you have to start churning before you pour in your ice cream. Just make sure you follow whatever directions yours has. Now this is going to turn and churn. Again, this took about 40 to 45 minutes. It really depends. You'll see when it kind of just starts really struggling to continue mixing, that's when it's done. So you can add green food coloring if you want to that base recipe. I don't mind having it just white, but what I do once I scoop it out is I'm going to take the instead of chips, because I find the chips a little too hard on their own, I use these chocolate flakes that I bought online, and again, just add as much as you want and mix it in. And I really like the thinness of these flakes. It makes it very nice mouthfeel when you're eating. We're going to finish mixing in our flakes, and then it's going to spend some time in the freezer. You can see right now it's more like a soft serve consistency, and if that's what you like, bon appetit. I like a little bit more of a hard serve, so this is going to spend a few hours in the freezer. Now we're going to make our chocolate flavor. So chocolate, we do a little differently. Since cocoa powder is hard to incorporate into cold ingredients, we're going to start by adding sugar and cocoa powder to our measuring cup or mixing bowl, whatever you're using. And I like to add a couple tablespoons, a little more sugar, because cocoa powder is a little bitter and it helps kind of balance that. You can use Dutch process, regular. This is cacao powder, which my kids like the flavor, so we're going to go with that. And you're going to want to sift it in because it likes to clump. And we want those clumps out before we start whisking in our wet ingredients. So once you've pushed it all through the sieve, give it a quick whisk so that the sugar and cocoa powder are mixed. And then we're going to slowly add our half and half. We're going to whisk a little bit at a time over and over again to help kind of the cocoa powder to mix into the wet ingredients without it kind of just floating on the surface, which cocoa powder tends to do. So we're going to slowly add our half and half until it's well incorporated, and then we can add our heavy cream. Just 2 cups and 2 cups, just like the rest of the recipes. So the only thing different was we mixed the dry ingredients first in this case. Now we're almost done. There's one last thing we need to add, and that's our vanilla. And this recipe is using anywhere from 1.5 to 2 teaspoons of vanilla, depending on how you prefer it. I've done both and honestly have barely noticed a difference. So vanilla is expensive. Go with 1.5 teaspoons. But anyway, we whisked that in. And again, just a few seconds with a whisk, and it's ready to go into the ice cream maker and process. And here we are, our 4 flavors: chocolate, mint, vanilla, and cookie dough. I hope you enjoy. Now I'm just going to show you the texture here of the vanilla. Here's the cookie dough, and there is the mint chip and the chocolate. I hope you guys try this out and that you like it as much as we do.